Well, very quick turnaround here, okay, but the second video of the day, due to me being busy later. So this video we're going on my top 1000 from numbers 290 down to 281. So fighter number 290 is former bantamweight, yes, bantamweight, turned heavyweight, Willie Meehan. Now, Willie Meehan, okay, beat 3 world champions. He fought 61 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 72 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, Willie Meehan had a much reduced number of 12 fights against rated fighters due to being a pre-rating era fighter. Again, like many fighters from this time, had he been around in a rating era, that number would be way, way higher. So Willie Meehan scored 20 knockouts, 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and won in the first round. Willie Meehan, okay, was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run of 21 fights. He was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings, but he did have 15 fights against pound for pounders, including 4 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Willie Meehan, okay, opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18. His opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. Yeah, good to see you, Paul. You were just watching me the other one hour ago. Yeah, I'm uploading 2 today, but I have to do them closer together, just due to me being busy later. So, on to fights against champions. Willie Meehan had 11. Okay, many of those fights against champions are against names like Sam Langford and Jack Dempsey. So he's certainly mixed in tough company. Meehan scored 4 wins with 5 losses and 2 draws with 0 knockouts. He had 15 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 8 losses, 3 draws with 0 knockouts. And Willie Meehan had 0 title fights. I've never fully nailed down the legendary draw that Willie Meehan fought with Harry Wills when Harry Wills was a weighing featherweight. Now, I've read the articles from their rematch they had later, and the writer's saying, oh yes, at this point in this city they fought to a draw at featherweight. Because Willie Meehan, of course, were a former jockey, okay? He were a former, pretty much a flyweight, Harry Wills. And apparently when he was bulking up in weight as he grew and ate and boxed, he fought Willie Meehan to a draw at featherweight, because Meehan started at bantamweight and he also traversed up to heavyweight as well. So yeah, fascinating story. I've seen articles talking about this draw, but I've never found an article stating Willie Meehan and Harry Wills drew on points over 4 rounds. So yeah, I've never found it, but I have looked, trust me. But yeah, that's an incredible story, because then, if that is true, they would later meet at heavyweight. But anyway, there's Willie Meehan in number 290. When we go to fighter number 289, it's another not spoken of fighter called Chick Suggs. Now, Chick Suggs was one of those tough contenders who could give most people a good fight on his day. He beat 2 world champions, he fought 87 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 41 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Chick Suggs had a total of 39 fights against rated opponents, and he scored 33 knockouts, 10 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 3 knockouts in the first round. Chick Suggs was top 10 rated for 2 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to a total of 32 fights. Now, Suggs was pound for pound rated for 1 year. He had 13 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Chick Suggs' opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So Suggs, okay, had 10 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 7 losses, no draws with no KOs. He had 5 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 4 loss, no draw with 0 KOs, and he had 1 title fight that was a defeat. But at least, unlike many fighters on the last video, and Willie Meehan to start this one, at least he managed to get a title fight, which many fighters back in this era didn't, contrary to belief. So on to fighter number 288, it is the ambling Alp, okay, Primo Carnera, former heavyweight champion. Carnera beat 4 world champions, he fought 70 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 69 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Primo Carnera had 28 fights against rated opponents, and he scored a total of 71 knockouts, 44 in 3 rounds or less, and 15 in the first round. I'll just throw my ball for the dog. Are you ready? Primo Carnera was top 10 rated for 7 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 24 fights. Now, Carnera was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter, but 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Primo Carnera's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Carnera had 8 fights against champions, including 4 wins, 4 loss, no draw, with 2 knockouts. He had the same record, difference in KOs, against Hall of Famers. 8 fights, including 4 wins, 4 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And he had 4 world title fights, including 3 wins, 1 loss, no draws, and 2 title defences. So, yeah, exactly, Paul, yeah. No overload of worthless titles, yeah. Also, a lot of the champions back then didn't defend the titles overly. Sometimes they'd defend the title once a year, once every 18 months. They'd fight exhibitions, especially back going to 1890s to 1910 period. Sometimes they'd have large gaps. Other fighters like Tommy Burns, defended his title a number of times. It depended on the fighter. But yeah, I definitely agree with that point. So from Carnera in 288, we go to fighter 287, okay, 2. An awarded world champion, okay, Joe Knight. It did happen, very, very rarely. Joe Knight beat 3 world champions. He fought 128 rounds against champions. And he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 25 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Joe Knight had 31 fights against rated fighters. And he scored 61 knockouts, 26 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 in the first round. Joe Knight was top 10 rated for a total of 5 years. And he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 21 fights. Now, Joe Knight was pound for pound rated for 1 year, and he had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win. He scored also 1 win against pound for pound top 3 fighters and number 1 fighters. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So Knight, okay, who fought at light heavyweight predominantly, okay, had 14 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws with 2 knockouts. He actually went unbeaten, albeit in a small number of fights against Hall of Famers, having 2 fights, including 1 win and 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. And he had 2 title fights, including 0 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, and 0 title defences. So there's Joe Knight in 287. When we go to fight number 286, okay, is a very underrated contender, and a very good contender, okay, Kenny Lane. Another name who goes unspoken of. Kenny Lane beat 4 world champions, okay, fought 146 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 66 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Kenny Lane had a total of 43 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 19 knockouts, 6 in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. Kenny Lane was top 10 rated for a decade worth of years throughout his career, at 10 years, and his longest unbeaten run was 19 fights. Now, he himself was such a good contender, he managed to get into my pound for pound ratings for 3 years. He had 12 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 4 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Kenny Lane's opposition fought rate was 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Lane had 15 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 8 loss, 2 draw, with 0 knockouts. He had 6 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 4 loss, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. And he had 3 title fights that were defeats. So on from Kenny Lane, okay, in 286 we go to fighter 285, to another tough fighter, former world champion Melio Bettina. Now Melio Bettina beat 5 world champions individually, fought just over 100 rounds against champions, with a total of 106, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters. Now Bettina fought 93 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career, and he had a total of 27 fights against rated opponents. Now Bettina scored 36 knockouts, 18 in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round, and he was top 10 rated for a total of 7 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 17 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, against pound for pounders himself, Melio Bettina had 11 fights, scoring 5 wins against pound for pound fighters overall, with 3 wins against top 3 pound for pounders and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And his opposition fought rate was 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. Yeah, Paul, with a family and children, we elected to get a very strongly orientated family type dog, albeit a bit dippy, so we got a purebred golden Labrador. Lovely dog he is. Great with kids, but a bit tongue outside of mouth when we take him out to play, a bit bonkers. Energetic and friendly and playful. So Emilio Bettina had 10 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 5 loss, no draw, with 3 knockouts. He had 8 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 4 loss, 1 draw, with 2 knockouts. And he had 4 world title fights, including 1 win, 3 loss, no draws, and 0 title defences. So Bettina is in 285. When we go to fight at 284, it's another very good fighter from Mexico, who never gets mentioned, Juan Zurita. Now, Juan Zurita was a short reigning world champion. He beat 5 world champions, fighting 101 rounds against champions. And Zurita beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, and also tallied up 88 rounds against Hall of Famers. Against rated fighters, Juan Zurita had 33 fights, and he scored 48 knockouts, 18 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Now, Zurita was top 10 rated for 4 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 17 fights. Now, Zurita was pound for pound rated for 1 year, and he had 11 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Zurita's opposition fought rate was 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. I know what you mean, great head droppers as well, plus a big clubby tail. Watch that mug of coffee, you know what I mean. Yes, I do know what you mean. He's a bit, when he goes into play mode, he's a bit bouncy. He's 10 months old, so he's still growing a bit. Cody? Just say his name and he's perking up, looking at me, thinking I'm going to throw his ball. Not yet, boys, soon. Anyway, distraction, right? So, fights against champions. Juan Zurita had 13, including 6 wins, 7 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 11 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 7 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And he had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, with 0 title defences. But mixed in very good company indeed, he did, fighting in a tough era. So from 284 we go to fight at 283. It's to another excellent fighter that some people have told me, if this guy had even a small title reign, he'd probably be in the Hall of Fame. Excellent contender, Tony Herrera. Now, Tony Herrera beat 3 world champions. He fought 61 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 75 rounds against Hall of Famers throughout his career. Now, against rated fighters, Tony Herrera comes in with a large total of 49 fights against rated fighters. He scored 26 knockouts, 12 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. And Tony Herrera was top 10 rated for 4 years. Now, he had a longest unbeaten run that came to 23 fights, and Herrera was pound for pound rated for 1 year. Now, Herrera had 14 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 7 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Herrera's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Herrera had 7 fights against champions. That includes 3 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 8 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 4 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. And Herrera had, you guessed it, 0 world title fights. Isn't it amazing that a lot of the more dangerous contenders never seem to have world title fights? Incredible coincidence. So, on to our next fighter, number 282, that fighter is another very good contender called Eddie Cool. Now, most people will never have heard of Eddie Cool, Eddie Cool beat 6 world champions. He fought 110 rounds against champions, and he, like Tony Herrera, also beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 60 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, against rated fighters, Eddie Cool also has quite a large total of 39 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 15 knockouts, 5 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. Eddie Cool was top 10 rated for a total of 5 years, and his longest unbeaten run came to a total of 15 fights. Now, Eddie Cool was pound for pound rated for 1 year in my all-time rankings, and he had 12 fights against pound for pound and scored in 6 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against pound for pound number 1 rated fighters. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Eddie Cool had 11 fights against champions, with a winning record there of 7 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. He had 6 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. And you guessed it, the other dangerous contender who was pound for pound rated Eddie Cool had 0 world title fights. You start to see a picture emerging. Paul Gaskell, would you say Langford was most avoided fighter, avoided over multiple divisions, or maybe the Black Murderers row? I still say to this day the 2 most avoided fighters are my 2 top fighters, Langford and Greb. Greb was avoided for years by Johnny Wilson. He was avoided by many fighters at middleweight. He was also avoided by many fighters, whether it be Berlenbach, Jack Delaney, all these guys are light heavyweight. He was also avoided by Jack Dempsey and a number of other heavyweights. But to me, Langford pips him because he was avoided by lightweights and welterweights, like Honey Melody avoided him. Jimmy Britt at lightweight avoided him. You've got former welterweight champ Mike Twin Sullivan and his brother Jack Twin Sullivan, who fought, from welter to light heavy. They avoided him. You had Billy Papke avoiding him. You had Frank Klaus avoiding him. You had Jack Johnson avoiding him. When you actually go down Langford and Greb's roster, with Greb, he also called out Georges Carpentier. He also called out Battling Siki, to add to Jack Delaney, to add to Jack Dempsey. When you look at those 2, they were avoided by so many Hall of Fame fighters, okay? Fighters who were some of the best fighters of their eras wanted no part of them. I still say to this day, Langford and Greb are the most avoided. And if I ever did a video, which I won't because I'm far too busy on other things, but if I ever got round to a video listing all of the fighters that avoided those 2, people would be horrified because the list is full of champions, Hall of Famers, top contenders, and it's a right pile on both sides. So I still say those 2 are most avoided. Yes, the Black Murderers row were avoided to an extent, but you had fighters like Zivic fighting them, you had fighters like LaMotta fighting them, you had a lot of top level fighters fighting them, like you did with Greb and Langford as well. They fought a lot of top level fighters, but I still edge it to Greb and Langford as most avoided. So there's Eddie Cool there in 282. Okay, let's go on to our final fighter, number 281, and it is to a non-spoke of Filipino fighter, one of the Philippines' fantastic little fighters, Little Pancho. Now, Little Pancho, okay, beat 3 world champions. He fought 114 rounds against champions. And Pancho beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 35 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Some modern boxing fans say, well, the Philippines and South America and Africa and all these places and Russia, they only ever produce fighters from end of Cold War. Kibosh! You've got Newsboy Brown, whose family fled Russia, became a Hall of Fame flyweight. You've got all the fantastic Philippine, Little Pancho, Little Dado, Small Montana, Seferino Garcia. You've got fighters from everywhere around the world. South American fighters, Latino fighters. This talk that, all these countries joined boxing after Cold War is ignorant, okay? The people saying that are being totally ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in an insulting way, I mean ignorant in they just don't know what they're talking about. So Little Pancho beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter. He fought 35 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Pancho had 53 fights against rated fighters. Now he scored 18 knockouts, 8 knockouts in 3 rounds or less and 2 in the first round. And Little Pancho was top 10 rated for a total of 6 years. Now his longest unbeaten run was a run of 25 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Just to give you an idea, Paul, in 1911, I read an article, a big article. It was talking about Ketchell's fall and who'd be the dominant middleweight, and it was mentioning Papke and Klaus and the Sullivans and all these other fighters, Hugo Kelly's, all this stuff, and he was talking about them. And he said, basically in his time, because a lot of people don't realise, they say Langford's famed at heavyweight, but in his time he was famed as a dangerous middleweight, and they had, as Abe Attell would later attest to when he said, no, Robinson ain't the greatest middleweight I've seen. The greatest middleweight I've seen is Sam Langford. Now, the newspaper writer was absolutely contemptible at them all, Klaus and all of them, saying, if Langford comes back down to middleweight, he didn't say 160, he's cleaning them all out. They'll all get destroyed by him. That's how good Langford was at middleweight. That fighters like Papke and Klaus and all of those fighters, Hugo Kelly, the Sullivans, would be brushed aside by him. That's how good he was at middleweight. And I think not everybody gives Langford his credit for being the fantastic middleweight fighter he was. So, onwards with Little Pancho. So he was top 10 rated for 6 years. He had the longest unbeaten run of 25 fights, and he was never pound for pound rated. Now, Little Pancho had 5 fights against pound for pounders, but scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories. And his opposition fought rate was 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. It's going to be interesting how these fighters who never had titles but fought tough opposition fare in my new calculated top 1,000 rankings. I've done about 120 fighters already. I'm doing a chunk every week, so over 6 months, 4 months, the top 1,000 will be rescored into my new criteria, and it's going to change things around. So it's going to be interesting for me watching how that change occurs and where people go and how it affects certain kinds of fighters. So that's going to be fascinating. And the top 1,000 I produce will be that new top 1,000. I'm still rescoring the top 1,000 in my old criteria, as well as I go on updating all the career files and adding new fighters in. But I've created this new side ranking that I can quickly collate over 6 months, do the whole top 1,000 again, and I'll have a brand new list under a brand new format. And we'll see when I do the next top 1,000 countdown how that affects things. So Little Pancho had 11 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 3 loss, 3 draw with 1 knockout. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 2 loss, 1 draw with 1 knockout. And Little Pancho, you guessed it, had 0 world title fights. So anyway, big shout out to Paul in the chat. Good to see you, buddy, as always. Hope you're well. My best to your missus as well. Hope you all enjoyed your time in Greece. Bit hot for me. I'm definitely Northern European. I don't like it too hot. I had a friend, because one of my ambitions is to go see Great Pyramid of Giza. It's a structure that's obsessed me since mid-90s. I've watched everything about it you can imagine. And my friend a number of years ago went to see it. And he said, oh, it's staggering. He said, you stand at the stones at the base and you arch your neck back and look up. And he said, a whole half of the sky is solid stone. He said, you get an eerie feeling stood next to it, like it's, he said, it's really strange. You get a really weird feeling when you see the size of it, that it seems strange. But I said to him, downgrading conversation, how hot is it? So he said, I went on day 1, I had a jumper on, just a jumper. I didn't have a top underneath because it was really warm. I had a jumper on. That jumper had a crisscross pattern. He said when he got back to his hotel that afternoon after going to Giza Plateau, when they got back to the hotel, driving through villages where apparently the coach was attacked and people were trying to slash its tyres and throwing bricks at it. When they got back to the hotel, he said he took his jumper off and the sun had sunburnt him through the jumper, so he pulled his top off and he had the crisscross pattern all over his back, arms, body. He said that's how hot it was. I'm like, okay. Maybe when they unleash Sunblock 300, I might go there. Because he said he had a high factor. It wasn't factor 50, it was factor 30 something, I think. But he said it did look good. He said he should have put stronger stuff on. I'm like, crikey. Yeah, might not be quite ready to cook like that. And he said, take water. Lots of water with you. So anyway, I'm really deflecting. So there's my latest video, 290 down to 281. Okay, and more videos are coming over coming time. I've only got 9 videos to get ready now. Over the coming week and a half, I'd say those are going to be got ready, and then it's just pedal to metal. These videos are going to be coming thick and fast, so watch out for them. So I'll say good day to Paul, hope you're well, my best to your family, and I will say I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.